So Pamela and I did get to know each other when I ran for Premier in the first place. And, we knew each other before that, I guess. And I persuaded her, or I didn't really persuade her. She decided she was going to leave a life of being nonpartisan, if you can accept that the media is ever nonpartisan. And I think if you follow it closely, you know that it's not. However, she left that role and decided to be openly partisan because she believed in something. And I think, when Christine talked about the example that we want to set for our kids, are you that person that you want your kids to become? I think each of us, when we make those kinds of decisions, are moving ourselves hopefully closer to that. And so, Moira Stillwell has made that decision in running for office, leaving a very important job as a medical researcher, and also Mary McNeil leaving leaving a career that she had in development for one of the biggest nonprofits in the province. And each of us do that too. Now, but the reason I ran was because I spent a lot of time thinking about whether or not I would do it. Because as Pamela said, I left for 5 years because, she said, I left after Hamish came along, and I turned to the woman sitting next to me and I said, yeah, I cracked. I just had to quit for a while and give it up because it was really hard. And I also looked at it and I thought, boy, my son isn't going to get another mother when he's so little. And I realized I was missing his life in those years. So deciding to come back to politics was a really tough decision for me because it's a very difficult, I'm sure you can tell, it's a very hard job. And it takes a lot of time and there's a lot of travel involved in it. But when I thought about doing it, it was back to that question. Was I becoming the person that I hoped Hamish would become? And I looked, I thought about why I didn't want to run, and I realized, well, I didn't want to run because it's hard. It's really hard. I didn't want to run because people are really tough on you and say terrible things about you, and that's really hard. And then I thought, I kind of like it being in the media because that's actually pretty easy. At least in my job it was. I'm sure when Pamela was doing it, it wasn't. At CKNW, it wasn't that onerous. And I realized I was not, in deciding not to run, I was not being the person that I wanted Hamish to be. Because I want my son to be the guy who is going to do things no matter how hard they are, if it's the right thing to do. Right? And I want him to be that guy who's going to stand up, if he's sometimes the only guy who's going to stand up when everybody else is throwing things at him and insulting him and saying he's on the wrong path. If he believes he's doing something that's important, he can't back down. And I think we all want our kids to be that person. When your kid sees somebody being bullied at school, what do you want them to do? You want them to be the kid who stands up and says, this is not okay. Even if they're the only one that does it. And so that was what made me decide I wanted to get back into politics. Because I just realized I was not showing character in deciding to turn away from something because it was hard and deciding not to make a change in the world around me. Because the other thing I want for Hamish is I want him to be someone who decides he wants to make the world better, not worse. And that's why that's why everybody, no matter what political persuasion you're made of, gets into politics. But I will tell you the other story about family that probably taught me more about family than even becoming a mom. And I bet you everybody in this room will be familiar with this story in their own lives in one way or another. Because we are not just parents, we're also daughters. And in my life, my mother, right after I got out of politics, about 6 months later, got very sick with a brain tumor. And she was a very athletic, healthy, clean-living woman. And there was no reason for her to get fatally sick at 75. But she did. And so I don't know if any of you have had a parent who has been suffering from the loss of their cognitive function, but you do have to kind of maintain your sense of humor while you're in the midst of it because it's very difficult when they don't remember who you are. And so in those days, after I got into politics, I was working part-time hosting the Bill Good Show. And that's a morning show. It starts at 8:30. So I would get up, I would drive to the hospital in New Westminster. I would go and I would give my mom a shower because she would panic when a stranger tried to give her shower in the morning. And then I would get her back into bed. I would go to work. I would come home from work. I'd pick up Hamish at daycare, bring him home, and then we'd both go back out to the hospital at night. And I would brush my mom's teeth and give her dinner, and then brush her teeth and that kind of stuff. And it was a really hard time in my life. And but the story in it is this. She had the love of her life was a guy named Jerry Carter. And Jerry and she had known each other since they were at university together at UBC. And late in life, after she'd gotten divorced and he'd been widowed, they got together. And they were going to get married. But she got very sick. She got this brain tumor, and so they weren't able to get married. And then Jerry was devoted to her. He used to come see her 3 times a day. And I went into the hospital one day and she said, first of all, she said, where the hell have you been? You haven't come visit me in the hospital once in the entire time I've been here, because her memory was very bad. But then she said, hang on a second, I've got to tell you something really important. You're not going to believe what just happened. Jerry and I have finally gotten married. And I said, what do you mean? She said, you're not going to believe this, but the surgeon who performed the operation is a very spiritual man, and he performed a marriage, and Jerry and I are finally married. But it's a secret. And I said, what do you mean it's a secret? She pulls me in really close, and if you've ever had a relative who suffered from this kind of cognitive dementia, they've got a tough grip. She pulls me in really close to her, and I get really close, and she says, just remember, it's a secret. Whatever you do, don't tell Jerry. And it was that experience with my mom that taught me everything, really, about family that I hadn't learned already from becoming a mother myself, which is families are diverse. And we don't define them just by the fact that we have kids. It's the fact that we are kids, that we have brothers and sisters, that we have cousins, that we have nieces and nephews that we love, godchildren that we love, and friends who are like family to us. And as women, I think many of us would look around at our book club or our running club and feel like those people are members of our family. Family is a very broadly defined thing. And I define it as that group of people around you who loves you and sustains you and is there in a time of crisis. The other thing that I learned is that there are lots of things that government cannot do. There are gaps that government cannot fill. There are only things that families and the people who love you can do. Government should not fill those gaps. We shouldn't aspire to fill those gaps. But what government can do, and ultimately this is the thing that motivates me to get to do this particular job. What government can do is we can support families to try and make them strong enough to be able to sustain the people that they love. That's what government can do. And so raising the minimum wage, or trying to make sure more people are working, attracting investment to the province so that there are more jobs for people to go to every day so that you can earn a good living and look after the people that you love. Those are the things that government can do. Grow the tax base in the province so that we can support healthcare and education and put more money into those services that people depend on. Those are the things that we can do. Because if you can send your kids to a great school, or your mom is being cared for by a great healthcare professional, you are able to do the things that government cannot do. And that's crawl into bed with your aging mom when she's panicking from the drugs. Or it's brushing her teeth, or giving her a shower. Only we can do those things. I can't do them for you, but I can help you do those things by making sure our economy is strong and growing, and that we all have jobs to go to. And that if you're a small business entrepreneur, helping you with some of the programs that we are contemplating and that I am learning about from some of you. And I know I've met with some mom bloggers in the last little while. And the last time I met with you, you said we should have a program where we are offering training and mentorship support for people who are basically sole entrepreneurs or micro businesses. And we've done that. Now, it's not perfect. I've heard since I've met with you since then that there are problems with the program, which we're going to fix. But there are other things that we can do too. Microloans for small business, for micro businesses and sole entrepreneurs. Those very small businesses in the province, many of which are represented here, I think, to help you be able to do all those things that we can't do. which is care for the people that you love in your life and do a good job of it. So that's really all I had to say. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Premier. So, a couple of days ago, Christine held a Twitter town hall and asked British Columbians, and I think you posted this on Facebook as well, what they would like to ask you. If you could ask a question of the Premier, what would you ask her? And so I brought along the top questions, top 5. So the first one, I think something that a lot of people want to know about, and it's of concern to a lot of parents, is the big issue, the very difficult issue for most parents of childcare. So what can you tell us about your feelings about childcare?
That here's my experience of it. When you need it, it's a very big political issue. It is probably the most important issue in your life if you don't have it. And then once you have it, it's still a very important issue. And then once you don't need it anymore, you stop thinking about it. That has been my experience with lots of people. Now, I don't use a lot of childcare anymore, but I am still thinking about it. And the reason I make that first point is because I think that one of the reasons that, despite the fact that childcare is probably one of the most important services governments provide, the reason we don't have a national childcare program is because there is a sliver in your life where you're really politically motivated to do something about it, but it doesn't have the kind of broad public support that it should have, because we're not all dealing with it all the time. And it deserves that support. So I've been Premier for about a year and a half, and we have a very tough budget scenario. We are going to balance our budget this year because I think British Columbians deserve that. But we are thinking about how we can start to change our childcare programs and improve them. So my experience with it was, like most of you, I couldn't find it. And then once I found it, I wondered if I could afford it. And then once I could afford it, I looked around and I realized, wow, all the people that work in it don't last very long, lots of times, because it doesn't pay very well. So there are problems throughout this system. If you can afford it, good luck finding it. Once you find it, you never want to give up that spot, even if it's not a great spot. And I know I have a lot of friends who have lived through, I have lived through this as well, low quality childcare. And you don't feel good about it. You can't feel good going to work every day if you don't feel like your children are being looked after exactly the way that you would like them to be looked after. So those are the problems that, at least, kind of big picture problems that I see in the system. We are not in a position to create a program like they have in Quebec today, because that's about $1 billion program. We just don't have the money to be able to do that. But I think there are 2 things that we can do. One, we can try and knit together better and connect better all of the programs that are out there. So, government's introduced all-day kindergarten, for example, which helps with 1 year of childcare for lots of people, or at least, in that 1 year. But we've also got Strong Start, which is a great program for particularly stay-at-home moms to be able to access childcare. And we have a number of other programs out there. They're not well knitted together. So we need to weave them together better, and I think we need to find a way to inject more money into the system so that we can support more parents in accessing the system. And I think trying to make sure that we're opening up more daycare spots. It is one of the most complicated public policy problems government faces. Mary McNeil, when she was Minister of Children and Families, until recently, I don't know where Mary's sitting, I keep pointing over there, I see Moira, but I don't know where Mary is, started this look across government at it. So what I'd like you to do, encourage you to do, because we're doing a province-wide consultation on this in advance of the budget now. This website, govtogether.bc, is a website that where on any topic where we're doing a consultation, you can have input. And this is where you can have your input on what you think we could do with our childcare programming. Now keep in mind, the sky isn't the limit today. We want to incrementally start making it happen in this budget, but this is the way to make sure you have your say in what you think a childcare program should look like, so that we can put something in the next budget that will get us on the road to improving this. And these are out at the registration desk as well if you're looking for if you're looking for that specifically. So
Great. Okay, good answer. All right, so.
good
yeah.
answer. Thanks, Bella. She never used to say that when she used to
I
interview
know,
me.
I never did. Okay, I've changed. You mentioned something about how hard it is to.
That was your inside voice back in the day, but not.
I know. I'll never tell you. You mentioned something about how hard it is for everyone to go to work, and you're always feeling kind of torn. And how do you deal with that, the guilt that you may or may not feel?
I do feel it. I think you wonder every day, am I doing the best job of being a parent because I'm working? And then, of course, when you're not working, if you've had this experience, because I have, you're feeling like, am I setting the best example of being a parent by not working? And so...
You can't win.
No, I know. So I have a friend who works very, very hard at her job. She's got kind of a 24/7 job, and she's very successful at it. And whenever she drops her daughters off at school, all the moms who are not working, or who are working at home, I should say, but aren't in paid employment, are standing there with their kids chatting. And she was driving away from the school one day, and she had the sense that all of those moms were looking at her with an accusing look in their eyes, saying, I can't believe you're driving off and leaving your kid here. And so she picked up the phone and she phoned her husband and she said, I want to buy a Porsche. If they're going to accuse me of all this, and you know what? I said to her, listen, Zdenka, those women think you are looking at them and saying, why aren't they going to work every day? I mean, we all suffer that guilt. So, I mean, I guess you just kind of have to believe that what you're doing is the right thing. All of us have a different circumstance, and some kids require different levels of attention. And, for me, I think my son needs the example that I am setting in doing this. Now, I'm not going to do this forever, but a couple weeks ago, he came in first day of school, and he goes to an independent school. So he only has 2 pairs of pants he can wear to school. And of course they weren't hemmed for him because I'd forgotten. And so I was busy. And so he comes in and he goes, first day of school at a new school, Mom, my pants aren't hemmed, what am I going to do? And so I'm sitting there. My assistant is banging on my door trying to get me to leave so I can get on the plane and go to Victoria. And I'm trying to hem his pants. And I looked up at him and I said, hey, Mish, I've got to shuffle the cabinet in about 2 hours. But he went to school with very unevenly hemmed pants.
Well, I'm impressed that you know how to hem the pants. I mean,
That's actually what he said. He said, Mom, I didn't know you knew how to sew. So you know what, I wish I had a great answer for that, except to say that you just have to be comfortable where you live. And accept it, because you know what? This is what I am doing right now. It is my reality. And I love this job, and I'm really passionate about what I'm doing. So I have to, every day when I feel guilty, remind myself, I am not going to feel bad about doing a job that I love. And I'm not going to let that encroach on my delight in going to work every day. And, worry and is suffering. Don't worry, and don't feel guilt, because why? You're only making yourself suffer. And that's not an exact quote from the Buddha, but
well, that's good. I like
somebody
that.
can Google that for me.
Don't
Something is
feel
suffering.
guilty.
I can't remember what it is.
That's great.
Back in the
Okay.
day when I had time to meditate, I used to think about those things.
Okay, another question. How do you deal with, and how do you help protect your child from the slings and arrows of politics?
That is a very hard part of this job, because I'm the adult and I can take it. Well, I encourage them only to read the back part of the newspaper where the sports pages are, first of all. But I want them to read the newspaper, and I want them to listen to the radio. And so I've tried to take it as a learning opportunity for him, because there are 2 things, I think. One is, all those awful things that people say about me, maybe probably not about you, but say about me, I say to them, look, in your life, people are going to say bad things about you. That's life. You're going to be at school, and there's going to be a bunch of kids who are spreading rumors about you, and they're saying it on the internet to each other, and the next thing you know, there's a Facebook campaign against you or something. And, I mean, you know, these things happen, right? I mean, when I was working on the anti-bullying campaigns, I can't tell you how many people I met who would live through this with their kids. You've got to have a thick skin, and you've just got to have the character to live through it and know that it's not true. So I say to him, Hamish, you know that these things are not true about me. So you need to learn that when people say bad things about you, it's equally not true. So that's one thing. And I think the second thing I want him to learn from it is that you really do have to take what you read and what you hear with the biggest grain of salt, you know, enough to quadruple your sodium intake in about, you know, in about 10 minutes. Because all media, even though much of it pretends not to be, has a point of view. It has somebody's perspective built into it. Everybody comes from somewhere, and everything we all say is colored by the place from which we come. And so I want him to know that, and so we listen to the radio and somebody will say something, and I'll say, why do you think they said that? And I think that's actually a good lesson for all kids when you're listening. We really do need to teach our kids about how important it is to understand the news that they're receiving so that they can be informed consumers, particularly today when our kids are getting most of their news from some really questionable sources on the internet. You know, I mean, so I think that's kind of, it's an important thing for all of us to do. In my case, it's a little bit more direct just because people are saying those things about me. And I think he kind of understands that, so.
But you know, I think, as we both know, the media thrives on conflict.
Yes.
So that is going to come up a lot more.
True, it's true, you know, and that's because the media is entertainment as much as it is news.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that from, I mean, CKNW in particular, where you're trying to get people not to change the station and you're trying to make sure people are interested all the time. You need conflict to talk about. You want people to pick up the phone and have an opinion on what's going on. You want to be provocative. Really, that's about being entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's
so,
about ratings. It's about getting
it is.
ratings, and it's business. So
yeah,
that's.
So I think that's an important. That's a very important lesson, but it's just part of the reality, and I think that's the way media has always been too. It's not just today. I mean,
yeah, no, absolutely.
Before you got into it, there was this thing called yellow journalism, Pamela.
Oh yeah, right. That's true.
It started a war.
Yes, yes. Well, we won't go on about China.
Okay.
But I do have one more question, which is, what is your definition of success as a mom?
I want my son to grow up to be a kind and compassionate parent, son, and friend. That's what I want for Hamish. And so I think, you know, I mean, he wants to be rich and have a hot
And that's okay too.
and have a hot girlfriend. And so I said, and then he said, because actually I had this conversation with him. I said, what do you want for your life? He said, I want a hot girlfriend. And then I said, well, and then he said, no, Mom, don't worry. I also want to go to a great university. And then so I said, okay, well, look, here's the thing. You got it backwards. Go to a great university, get a world-class degree from Stanford or UBC or whatever it is, then you're going to get hot girls. But it ain't going to work in the other direction, buddy. So that's what he wants in life. And, you know, at the moment, I mean, I think if I can, I believe he will be a success in life in whatever it is, however he defines success. And, you know, if he comes up with a way to treat autism so that children don't live with autism, that would be fantastic. If he grows up to be a social worker who helps people who are drug addicted in the downtown east side, that would be fantastic too. But ultimately, I want him to be kind to everybody around him. And I want him to stand up for the little guy because he's a compassionate person. And I think that, the reason I think that is because, you know, you think about all the religious all of the different religions out there, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, whatever it is, they all teach that as a central tenet for a reason. Because it's hard, I think, and we need to be reminded all the time. So whether or not you count yourself amongst the faithful, whether or not you believe in those kinds of things, I think it's something that we should all remember for ourselves in setting examples for our kids, first and foremost. And then that's how we will raise children who are kind and the kinds of citizens that we want if we want to live in a great country. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think you're doing a great job. I think you're doing a great job as a mom and as a premier too.
Thank you
I could be biased. But thank
Thanks,
you
everybody.
so much for coming and
Thank you very
sharing your
much.
thoughts with us. Premier Christy Clark.